Julie's the founder of TheRealReal. You started TheRealReal at 52 years old, but you weren't somebody that was afraid to take risk.
I was the CEO of pets.com, and then we had the .com bust. I had to understand what I want to do with my life, and if I was going to drive it or if I was going to let people's opinion of me drive it.
Did the haters put a chip on your shoulder and make you want to be successful even more?
I think being a woman in tech, you had to be a fighter. When you step out of your comfort zone is where you grow. And to me, that's what life's all about.
Julie Wainwright, welcome to Post Run High.
Hello, Kate. And thanks for letting me bring Poppy.
Julie and Poppy, welcome to Post Run High.
There we go.
I'm so excited that you and Poppy are here. How are you feeling today?
Well, I feel pretty good after that invigorating walk. That was fun.
Yeah, so Julie and I went for a quick walk in Brooklyn before sitting down for the podcast today. Are you a big walker? Do you like to get outside?
I love walking and hiking. It's a little hard in Manhattan to hike, but I do love a good hike.
What else movement-wise do you like?
Actually, I like to move a lot, but I would say mostly, I usually go to the gym. I have to get a sweat up. All right. But I'm more of an inside runner, walker. So the treadmill or the elliptical. But then walking around Manhattan's fabulous. I mean, what other city can you walk and see so much diversity?
It's so true. Has movement always been a big part of your life?
Yes, and it was probably because my dad was, always wanted a jock as a kid, and then he had me, then he had and I wasn't. And my sister Lisa was a great sprinter, and was setting records, and she was really fast. And then my brother was the ultimate. When he got his son, he got a guy who loved football. But I would say our family was more outdoors and probably suited me. I was sort of like, can't I stay inside and read? They're like, nope, we're going to do this. We're all going, yay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's one of those things when you grow up in an active household, I feel like movement is like ingrained in you, whether it's, playing sports when you're younger or literally just getting outside and moving your body. So I like knowing that. And I feel like a big misconception sometimes with founders and people that have had really successful careers is that they don't make time for movement. And
I always did.
Right?
Every day. In fact, that was my anti-anxiety drug. It still is. And I'm a morning workout person. So when you get up and you're like, okay, I looked forward to it. I looked forward to a good sweat. I mean, I do weight training too, but it really was getting my heartbeat up enough that I would sweat, and it just set the day. And if I didn't do it, by the end of the day, I was always grumpy. And I'm like, what is wrong? And I'm like, oh, didn't work out. It's just a good release, clears your head, changes your energy. Yeah, I love it.
It's literally therapy.
It is therapy. That and walking in nature, yes, and walking.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's such a benefit of having a dog because it kind of forces you to get outside even more. But it is so true that living in New York, we're natural walkers, we're walking everywhere. But we have to address it, Julie, because you and I are wearing total opposite outfits right now. And normally it's the other way around. Like I'm in activewear and somebody comes in the most glamorous outfit. But for our listeners, Julie is currently in a very cute, sporty, chic fit, leggings, long sleeve tops, sneakers, and I am in jeans, ballerina flats, and a sweater, which is very unlike me. We all know that.
So I thought this was the running show, and I thought, okay, I know we're not going to run, but I felt like I had to dress, and I've watched your videos, and I wanted to match your style, and it was sort of fun to not really worry, just put on stuff that I would wear out for a workout. But then I get here and you're all dressed up and you have cute earrings on, you got a belt on. It's sort of, it was like, okay.
Oh, guys.
And a trench coat.
And
a beautiful trench coat.
Thank you. It's so funny because Julie's is the founder of TheRealReal. And whenever I've had fashion icons in here, I have gotten bullied in the comments for not dressing appropriately. So when I had Tim Gunn on the show, who was, in Project Runway, obviously fashion icon in New York City, he came in like a proper pair of trousers, beautiful sweater, loafers, and I was sitting across from him in an Adidas tracksuit. And so when I was watching some of the interviews that you've done this past week, I was like, Julie always shows up in the cutest outfit. I saw you did an interview in a Diane von Furstenberg wrap dress, pretty recently. So I said to my team, I was like, okay, guys, can we all make a prediction that she's going to not wear activewear today? Because if that's the case, I can't wear activewear because I know how it goes down in the comments.
So there you go. All right. So we totally flipped the script.
Yeah. But I appreciate you doing your research.
I watched your videos. I'm like, I got to up my game, and then I'm like, oh, do I have time to up my game? Anyway, so I just wore my normal things that I wear, but it was so funny seeing you. I'm like, oh, come on. Having said that, it's very freeing to go to an interview in activewear.
It is, isn't it?
Yes. It's pretty amazing.
It is. I mean, I feel like as New Yorkers, we live so much of our daily lives in comfortable clothes. And then it's like, of course, sometimes at night, if we're going to an event, we're dressing up. But for the most part, I like live in activewear or a comfy pair of jeans and a t-shirt, you know? So
Isn't that great?
it is.
I'm sure Tim Gunn wouldn't think it's great, but that's okay.
Tim doesn't leave the house without a suit on.
No, I remember him saying that. Yes, and that's good. I love that. I love that for him.
I do too. I do really appreciate somebody that walks outside in a good outfit here.
I love it. Honestly, I think it's so much fun when you actually see people really dressed. I'm going to an event tonight, and I'm looking forward it's not a fashion event, but I'm always cognizant of the fashion and how people dress, and it's a very specific group. I'm like, oh, I wonder how they're going to dress tonight. So that'll
What
be
are you
good.
going to wear?
Well, I bought a green velvet, not too far off from this color, green
chairs.
velvet etro pantsuit with just a really pretty Dolce top under bow blouse underneath. That's really pretty because I'm not, it's just chic, and it's sort of business attire but a little dressier. So it's just awesome. It feels like coming into the holidays. It feels like fall. It's chic. It'll be fine. And I'm not the star of the show. And I'm going with my friend whose husband is being honored, and she's just like decked out. So I'm just going to be there supporting her.
I love it. That's so fun. I'm obsessed with Etro right now.
Well, I don't know if I should say, I never have purchased Etro till this year. And a stylist said, well, just try this suit on. And I thought, really? And I thought, oh, it's fabulous. And the interior is beautiful. It's beautiful paisley. It's so gorgeous.
I've never seen paisley done so well. I mean, I went into the Etro store with my mom kind of recently because I had seen some of the bags that they recently put out with like the horse that has wings, right? That's their logo, I guess. So I was like, Mom, you have to come into this store. Like we talked about this a little bit on the run, but I've never been a big fashionista. I don't really know that much about fashion, but I feel like as I've gotten older, and I have a lot of friends in New York that are in the world of fashion, whether it's they're in PR or they're always going to events and they have to look great, or like, influencers, they're always dressing amazing to events. So I feel like I'm around fashion a lot, but I don't know it that well. I mean, I've always just been like a sporty girl that can put on a cute outfit and look good, but it's not,
It's not your thing.
It's not, it is my thing, I would say. Like,
Okay.
I love it and I love fashion design and all of that, but knowing brands, and I didn't grow up with a mom that was like decked out in brands. My mom was always in a t-shirt and a good pair of jeans, and she always looked amazing because she was very fit, right? Anyways, I walked into the Etro store for the first time with my mom over the summer, and I was just in awe. And now whenever I see their stuff on like Net-a-Porter and I scroll through it, I mean, I just love the designs and everything.
So normally the way I shop is sort of the way the RealReal was constructed. I check the resale value because I do flip things fast, and I didn't check the resale value. So when I'm shopping, I'm very cognizant, like if I want to sell this, what the price would be. And with this one, I didn't look because I don't know where Etro is. For a long time, it wasn't great. But sometimes it's like, doesn't matter if you love it. And I would say sometimes it does because, people get very disappointed if they spent like $3,000 for something. The resale value is $200. Mm-hmm. But
so you're a smart shopper.
I am always cognizant of the difference between the resale value and the original price. And it's some cases I'll spend more if, I'll be like, okay, I can do it because let's say I want to resell it. I'm going to get 90% of what I paid for it back.
Have you always been a smart shopper, or would you say that really came into fruition when you started The RealReal?
It really came with RealReal, but I have to tell you something funny, because when you look back at life, you're like, oh, maybe this is also a childhood thing. First of all, my mother went to art school to become a fashion illustrator. All right, so that's a little random thought that popped in once I started the business, which I never really gave that much thought because she dropped out of college to marry my dad. But when I go back and look at her drawings, they're all fashion illustrations from the 50s, which is a fun period to do that. And then she did period costumes too and studied period dressing. All right, so there's that in the background. But then the other thing is, my mother would go to someone's house and she'd be like, I love that rug. when you get tired of it, I'll buy it from you. All right. So she was always like scavenging other people's homes, and people are like, well, it's not for sale. She goes, well, maybe it will be at some point. And I really love it. So just let me know. And then my dad would go to the local dump, and he would come home with furniture and refinish it, and would build out, like he built out his own pool room and bar area with refurbished furniture. Or so clearly that idea was already in my head on some level. But I had never shopped resale till I started The RealReal. And I'll tell you why. Online, it was scary because things weren't authenticated. And I didn't want to, back then it was more eBay, and I didn't want to go back and forth with some seller about a price. When you walk into the stores, this is pre The RealReal, I always thought they were interesting, but they just didn't feel aesthetically like a place I wanted to hang out. And usually you had to dig. You know, everyone loves their big finds. So I would say, I know for a fact, I never bought any resale till The RealReal. And then once The RealReal started, because remember, as a founder, you do everything. So I would be opening the boxes, and I'm like, these are amazing.
So you start getting ingrained in it, and you become a part of the world. Yeah, quickly.
And then I knew early on what consigners I could, because I was opening boxes. I'm like, I can wear everything that person sits here. We wouldn't let anyone shop the site and for the first day, because we wanted consumers to shop. No employees could shop it for the first day when we got started. But I remember thinking every time we got this box, it was someone in Chicago. I'm like, this person is me. She's like clearly my body type. Clearly she has my style. And I was so excited to get, and she was into more, a little more brands like Margiela at the time. And this was a while ago, it was sort of cutting edge, but still cool.
How do you feel about is it Mason Margiela that makes the shoes with the like cleavage?
Yeah, I'm not a fan. Not a fan. I mean, not a fan.
The fashion girls are screaming.
I'm not a fan. And you don't have, there's, at some point it becomes costumey or something.
Okay, so backing up, before we get to The RealReal, I really want to dive into your early career and kind of everything that led you to The RealReal, because you started The RealReal, as you said on our walk, at 52 years old, which is so impressive and really just a testament. I feel like we always see those memes online that's like, so-and-so started X business at this age, right? So it's like kind of this idea that it's never too late, But let's talk about everything that you did before The RealReal. So let's talk about the lead up.
I had a big career. So I started my career, as we talked about, at Clorox in brand management, moved to tech, ended up being a CEO at a company called Berkeley Systems, which did the flying toasters and the game. You don't know Jack. But the only reason I got promoted to CEO, and by the way, in this time I'm in my 30s, so if you just go like late 30s. But they promoted me because the company was failing. And I came up with a plan to turn it around. And first they said, okay, you do it, you're president. And then they're like, well, okay, now you did that, you're now CEO, and the founder wanted to take a different role. So I wasn't the founder of the company. So then the founder did sell the company over the one weekend. And then I'm like, well, looks like I have to get another job. And that's where I learned I should have asked for more stock, by the way. Up until then, I'm like, equity can come and go. But anyway, the next job was the CEO of a company called Reel.com, REEL.com. It was the first site to sell movies. In that case, there was another founder. That sold to Hollywood Video, which is something most people don't even know about. It was a poor cousin to Blockbuster. And it right away, like for $100 million. And so then I was offered the job as CEO of Pets.com because some young guy was actually owned the URL and was fulfilling pet supplies out of his second room in his apartment in LA. And he's like, I'm not cut out for this. So it was funded, and then I raised more money, and I was the CEO of Pets.com, and then we had the .com bust. And the Pets.com became the poster child for that. Mm-hmm.
And what was, for people that don't know, what was the .com bust? Because I'm not familiar with it.
Sure, I know. The whole generation forgot about it. So think of the year 2000, which were you born?
I was born in 1997.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you were 3.
Yeah.
But during that time, the internet was still really fresh, meaning Amazon was probably, I think by then, probably 4 years old. But people were just getting comfortable with shopping online. Medical information was just showing up online. It was just the beginning of personal use of the internet. I think at that time there was Netscape as your browser. Yahoo was hiring people to hand curate things because that was the only way they could do it. They would hand curate listings. It was just the beginning of everything. Because Amazon shot up, was such a big success, selling books at the time, and then they added music next and video, movies actually, selling movies. But so they were slowly they went up to like $1 billion fast. They were also losing a lot of money. But anyway, it was proof that consumers would transact on the internet. So it was really the beginning of change of everything. And when there's that kind of change, which we're in another one with AI, money flows in to create opportunities. And a lot of money was flowing in from the venture capital world to actually take advantage of this new platform that needed technology and needed people that knew how to work in a technology environment, but also, face the consumer. So it was a good time for people who have consumer experience and technology, and I was one of them. Pets.com was one of, ready for this, I think 11 pet sites funded. This just shows you how that lemming effect, it's sort of like, okay, the pets category at that time, I think it was $50 billion in the US. We're all gonna win in the pets category, and obviously 11 funded companies can't win.
It's a great URL, pets.com.
It was. That's what the young guy that started it, his name was Greg in LA. He turned out to be a URL guy. He made his money because he jumped on a bunch of URLs. So pets.com sold pet supplies online. It got a lot of hype because we had a little puppet. The pets.com puppet, which I have one of the original ones, that was kind of adorable. We ran television ads for the first time. And I took the company public right around the time Amazon was announcing their earnings. And instead of killing it on the earnings, they lost almost $1 billion that year. And they had a huge loss in the quarter, and the money started drying up. Everyone's like, well, if they can't make it work at their scale, how is anyone going to make it work? It's too early. And the money dried up. And so there was too much money rushing toward opportunities, and then it all pulled out. So I had to shut down pets.com. I didn't have to. I thought I wouldn't be able to get funding, and I thought it would be better to return money to shareholders rather than run it to bankruptcy. I think within a 6-month period, about 1,100 companies went out of business, including ones. Look, pets.com was a precursor to Chewy.com. There isn't anything Chewy.com does that pets.com didn't do earlier. But things like DoorDash and Instacart, there was a company called Webvan that actually burned through about $1 billion of capital even then, back then. But they were doing grocery delivery. They were doing at-home grocery delivering and actually bypassing the groceries. They actually had their own warehouses full of food. So if you think about and there's a lot of these stories, but those are the two that, Pets and Webvan come to mind because we're experiencing it now. So the question is, were we too early or was the money too timid? And I would say clearly,
combination of both.
It probably was both, yes.
Yeah. It seems like, I think that's also funny where it's like everybody thinks some of these ideas that happened in the last 5 to 10 years are so new, but it's so cool knowing that in the early 2000s, you guys were thinking about all these ideas at the beginning of kind of online e-commerce, but the infrastructure just also seems like it wasn't there.
Well, if you go back, and I've studied this, and you look at, I think in 2000, there were maybe 200 million people online, and they were cautious about actually transacting online. We had to have a little symbol a lot of people wanted to call and place their order over the phone. Like that was more safe. So people were very cautious. Now I think there's 4 billion people online. So when you talk, the whole idea was it was a land grab back then. If you're first, you're going to have a really hard time being dislodged in 5 to 10 years. And where it worked out for, who it worked out for was Netflix. So they were a company that started in, I think, the late 90s. It could have been 97 or 98. And they made it through the valley of death there, and they were just shipping DVDs. They were, it was a rental company, and they're shipping DVDs to people's homes, and they kept saying, no, we're going to be there when streaming happens. Of course, streaming didn't happen for 20 years, but they were able to raise enough capital and move forward in a way that they're a juggernaut. So they did start there and kept going. I'm trying to think, there's probably a few more, but that one is probably one of the largest examples that weathered the dot-com bust.
When you think about what happened during the dot-com bust, and you think about now, 25 plus years later, about what's about to happen with AI and what's currently happening with AI, what synergies are you seeing, and how do you think companies can set themselves up for success?
Well, I'm actually speaking on this on Monday. So when the e-commerce world sort of exploded, and people were leveraging the internet for that, a lot of companies would come to me and say, should I get into it? And they were all existing businesses. And I would say, you can wait, because we're working things out. And you had to build all these pieces. You had to write code for everything. I said, no, you can wait. It's a huge investment. I would recommend you wait till the platforms get solidified, because there was no platform then. Everything was hand rolled, and it was hard, and it was expensive, and you had to keep servers in a warehouse, and they had to be climate controlled, and you had to keep one warm in case your server went down. So it was just everything, the infrastructure, the cost of getting started could be $2 to $5 million before you open your door. So no, wait, your time will come. You won't be left out if you wait. That's not true with AI. And let's just talk about, the markets are crazy, valuations are high, et cetera, et cetera. But AI is going to pose risks. But in terms of the same kind, and there will be busts. We're definitely in a boom. There's going to be bust. But the majority of the money is being actually spent by large tech companies. So you've got established companies with huge amounts of profit building this new future. So the risk factor is lower. But there will be, it's still crazy. So there will be companies that spin out, and there'll be a minor bust. What is probably going to happen, and happened originally when the software industry picked up, is corporate started first, because that's where the money was, and then consumer, where in terms of people being able to monetize, came second. So right now there's huge amount of money being spent at corporation. What I think is going to be good, people are already taking costs out through AI, and they're redefining their processes. That won't reinvent their business though. And it's going to be helpful, but I do think especially people that run business to consumer companies need to think about how AI will reinvent what the consumer sees, how you interact with the consumer, not just your cost structure. Because someone's going to figure it out in a competitive category, and they're going to win.
How do you foresee a company like TheRealReal integrating AI in a successful way?
Well, I can't speak to what they're going to do now.
Yeah.
I can give some advice, unsolicited advice. But let me tell you what we did a long time ago. One of the key things that was a detriment to the business was, bad consigners who gave fake goods. Now, the company is processing thousands of products every day. And guess what? Bad consigners tend to look like each other. They have the same attributes. So when things come into the ops center, if they can be flagged as a potential high-risk consigner, they go through a different swim lane than someone else who's been consigning regularly. That doesn't mean things aren't authenticated. It's just one gets a lot more scrutiny. So that's number one. Number two, most of the copy now, and when I was there, most of the copy is written by going photo first. Now, that still requires consumer oversight. I'll give you an example. I just bought a skirt on the RealReal, and I just wanted a very specific pencil skirt and a very specific material. And I found what I wanted, and I found my size, but it was leather, and they called it wool. So those type of things still needs human oversight. There needs to be quality control. But to have a machine write all the copy off a photo is phenomenal. And then the other thing we were doing is, think about, you have a lot of authentic goods, you also have fake goods, and running handbags through First Pass with machine learning and kicking off anything that looks treacherous based on where counterfeiters kind of work. So it makes everyone's job smarter and more efficient. So we started doing that in 2019.
Oh, wow.
It's a long time ago now.
Right. So you guys were kind of early adopters to it. And it makes so much sense because a huge part of your business is you guys are managing a massive amount of inventory, and you have to go through it and make sure it's authenticated. And also I love how the website, will rank it good, excellent, whatever kind of condition. But yeah, when you think about it, like it takes a while to sort through those products by hand, right? So if you can have AI step in and help, and obviously there's kinks at first, but if that can become really efficient, then that
it's really
makes
efficient.
Your process.
So think about a normal retailer, maybe let's take, a smaller retailer. Maybe they have 25,000 SKUs in their store all year. And that's still a lot to manage. So medium size. Someone like a drugstore, may have 100,000 SKUs, maybe 110,000. The RealReal, when I was there, was getting in over 10,000 items a day. So this creates all kinds of technology challenges. So anything you can do to streamline that process, because the other thing that's really frustrating as a consignor is, okay, I sent it to you. You told me it's arrived in the warehouse. Why is it taking 2 weeks to get it on the web? So anything you can do to make the consignor happier and ensure the consumer has safety and guarantees, I think those things are great.
Yeah, and also make sure internally your business is moving as efficiently as possible because,
That's right. And economics actually work more favorably that way.
Absolutely. And, when I think about the RealReal, like there are so many things that if you're manually doing everything that needs to be done for the RealReal, it's like you get the product, you have to authenticate it, that takes time. Then you have to go through, take the photos, get them up on the website, then you're tagging the product right, you're putting the condition in, the material, the color, the design.
Well, all of that's
everything.
In the database. But so the copywriters would do all of that. Mm-hmm. So the database was set up there. But
that
at the beginning, it took a long time. So, and then the other thing we used to do is you'd have to color, because we had so many products, even when you're doing 500 million a year, which was about year 4 for us, it's still so many products coming in, and they all have to be light balanced, the photos, because if you walked into the op center, it's just row and row and row of photography stations. But so you get white light pollution. You really can't escape it. And so everything had to be light balanced, which meant we were sending them off in batches to India, to the Philippines to light balance them, because you don't want all that uneven look on the website, which gave, sometimes their internet would go down, things would happen, the transmission would drop a packet, and then you'd have to go through. And so that's all been taken care of now. It doesn't have to be offshored. And that was 3 days and incremental expense. It wasn't a lot of money, but it was also a time lag. So all of that was covered by the AI. And in the early days, so I have to tell you, like, is it back from Thailand yet? They're like, no, we have to get a new vendor there. Who was it? One of them had way too many holidays, I think, where they were like, oh, we have to balance our holidays, because people would all around the world take different holidays. They'd be gone for 3 days. They're like, we need our photos.
Anytime there's more cooks in the kitchen, it's just going to take more time. So yeah, it's kind of one of those things. And it's awesome that you're able to automate that now. This kind of came up when you were talking about your work history. You pretty quickly became a CEO.
Well, it didn't feel like it. But, all right, so here's the funny story. I wasn't jockeying for it. I didn't want the company to fail. Mm-hmm. So I came up with a plan, and they promoted me to run the company. It wasn't that big. It was about 40 million. So it wasn't that small either, but it wasn't that big. And I remember the board member, Ann Wimblad, called me to her office and said, look, the founder agrees. We really want you to be the CEO. We think you can do it. You've done a great job as president. And she goes, I'm really excited about this. I was I wasn't going to say no, but I was sort of shocked. So when I was driving home, the company, Berkeley Systems, no surprise, was in Berkeley. I lived in Marin County across the bridge. I almost drove to Sacramento. This is before cell phones. So I'm just like, and I'm married, I'm not coming home. And I'm like, because, in my head, I'm like, okay, now I'm CEO. What does that mean? What am I going to do? How am I going to do this? What about this? What are this? And I was playing out all the scenarios, probably working through a little bit of fear and anxiety. And I just kept going up north. I got home so late.
Right. Just on a long car ride, collecting your thoughts.
Yeah, I was.
Yeah.
Which is, it's a great thing to do.
Some people love long car rides like that for that exactly.
Well, I was so in my thoughts, I missed my exits. And I'm like, and then I finally had to stop at a payphone and call and say, sorry, I'm almost in Sacramento, but I got promoted. Yeah.
What kind of skills did you as a young employee kind of have that you think set you up for success to be considered to be promoted into a position like that? Because coming in for a founder-led business and being, nominated as a CEO, that's a big deal. And it requires a lot of trust from that founder in you. So what were some of the qualities you think you had?
So one of the beauties of going into packaged goods marketing is you run P&Ls. So you really have to understand the financial underpinning of the brand incredibly strongly. You have to understand the positioning of the brand. You have to understand how to market the brand. You have to understand what packaging works. It really is one of the best experiences for creating an entrepreneur when you're truly a brand manager. In my case, I left before I hit brand, but I was a brand. Now they bring people in as brand managers, but when I started, it was assistant brand manager when you learned all about promotions and you did tons of analysis. And then the assistant brand manager, you learned all about advertising and media, and they sent you out in the field to sell. Mm-hmm. All right.
So you kind of understood all the pieces of the pie when it came to...
All the pieces of the pie. So when I moved into tech, I also spent a lot of time, I was in product management. I spent a lot of time with the sales force because I wanted to know how are they, and this is when you bought software in the store. How were they positioning it? Where were they putting it? What did it look like on the shelf? What were they saying to the consumers? Because we also had a business division. How were they positioning the products? Who's making the decisions? So you didn't stop at your job. You made sure that sale was completed and really learning all the time. So then when I did international for software publishing, I had to run a little business. I had to set up partnerships and figure out what products to localize and what countries to focus on. So you just keep honing your skill set. But I would say understanding finance, understanding marketing, and understanding selling, which is really a part of marketing in any case. Those three things are probably my strengths, and they serve you well in life. Mm-hmm. So I would say the more, if you giving advice to someone starting their career, learn other people's jobs, see what they do, understand, because no one works in isolation. Not really. You may think you are, but if you want to advance, learn what other people do and how that impacts the overall success of the company, and then work with them, figure out how your job interacts with them and how you can collectively make a better success for the company and yourself.
But it is so true. You really have to holistically kind of understand everything in order to get to a position like a CEO.
Oh, I think so. I think that, so my dad loved his own business. He had his own art and design business. He loved what he did and it was fun. And I think by just having that environment in your household, whenever I did any job, I'm like, okay, this is interesting. In college, which I write about in my book, I dropped out of college for a semester because I was going to get married very young. I didn't, but I was going to. And the man I was marrying, his father was a general manager at a Delco Remy plant, which is a General Motors plant. I actually was a riveter on the line in Anderson, Indiana for 6 months, riveting Bonnie Carlo rear bumpers. And
what does riveting mean? Like you were
literally putting rivets in bumpers.
Oh,
building. We were
with
making
your hands.
Well, with a gun.
Oh, okay.
With a gun. So I was literally on the assembly line making car bumpers. But it was a new technique. It was using the first time a soft bumper arrived. They were one of the first to introduce it. It was the first time in the painting thing. It was automatic painting, not humans standing there painting the bumpers. It was the first time they had automated a factory so the parts came to you. So you weren't pushing and pulling and walking all over. And since the man I was dating's father was the GM, things were going wrong. And so I would work the line. Then we'd have discussions about what was working, what wasn't. And it was fascinating. I know it doesn't sound like a glamorous job, but it
how
was
things worked.
No, it was really a fascinating job, and understanding how people progress even as an employee there, because, working the line riveting bumpers wasn't exactly enhancing your brain. But it was when you ask questions. It's like, why did we do this? Why did you switch this? Why are we having problems here? What are you going to do with it? He was just so open. He was like, I was getting a master class in operations, and every new thing they were trying had never been done before. So that was also exciting to see new technologies employed and see that it doesn't go right. It went mostly right because the cars did have bumpers at the end of the year, but it took a lot of effort to get it right.
Yeah, and stuff happens, and you got to be able to think on the fly and figure it out. We kind of talked about this on the run, but I really want to dig into resilience a little bit more before we get to starting the RealReal, because after what happened with pets.com, I read online a little bit about it, and I heard you talk about it in interviews, and I know you talk about it in your book, but that was a hard time for you, right? When pets.com failed.
It was hard on so many levels because, I was in my 40s and early 40s, I think 41, 42, and I got a divorce, which is a hard time to get a divorce. And then as a woman, you have to also figure out about kids. And it felt like, I missed that one. And figure out, did I want to be a single mom? And then I don't think I put it in the book, but during that time, my mother also died, which actually on many levels was a blessing because she had multiple sclerosis and she was not in good shape. Oddly enough, even when someone's really ill, and she was mentally, she had sort of lost her mind also. So she had advanced dementia and her body was a mess, and she was only 62. She was only 20 years older than me. So when she died, it's sort of like hope died, but there was no hope, but it was still this, I don't know.
It's your mom. Yeah.
Well, but I mean, she wasn't my mom. That was another being there that was at one point my mom. But that happened, which also calls out how short life is and how lucky you are to have your health. So, you're like, okay, what I didn't know was that pets.com would be sitting like looming large behind my back for the next X amount of years. And then
explain that to us.
Well, it cast a big shadow because it was such a popular brand. And when it failed, the media was all over me. And honestly, recently I was thinking, I'm so glad it didn't happen. Well, it might have been easier now because there's some new disaster every 15 seconds, I think. And maybe it would have floated away, but then press all over the world focused on it. And it's partly because it was a new industry. So when things went well, they would talk about it. And then when things blew up, it was like, it was a field day for them. And it was everywhere, all over the world. So it was a huge stigma and a negative one. And it was negative socially. It was negative professionally. Like I'd go out and I didn't want to talk about it. And people would say, aren't you? And then someone would say something really horrific to me on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm. Like, what's the most horrific thing somebody said to you?
Oh my God, this person she said, oh, you are a joke. And she just laughed in my face. I thought,
yeah.
This is someone who, by the way, never did anything and never took a risk.
You know what? That immediately came to mind. It's so funny. I was interviewing Gabby Thomas, who's an Olympic runner, gold medalist, right? I interviewed her right after she had won gold in Paris. And she said to me, I'm currently in a Twitter war with someone. And it was somebody kind of mocking her for X, Y, and Z reason. And I'm thinking to her, and I said to her, I'm like, it's so crazy that somebody, random person, anonymous username on Twitter is in a fight with you and you're having to defend yourself. Gabby Thomas, an Olympic gold medalist, this person's never going to achieve anything close to what you've achieved and put your body through and worked hard for.
And they have no idea. They have no idea. Well, that's sort of, we're at the random mudslinging time right now. I mean, I just look at it, it's like, what? stop. And it's, you know what, so where does this come from? It has to come from inadequacy and you know, it's pretty easy to punch down. You know, if you're not feeling good about yourself, it's pretty easy to punch down. So, you know, these people, I don't know. Anyway, it was bad. So that was bad. And I had to get back to things that really brought me joy, which tended to be being around creative people. So that was helpful. Hiking. I did a lot of outdoor hiking. I did take some different jobs that weren't great. In fact, they weren't great, but I had to pay the bills because when you get a divorce, if you have money, you get usually half the money then. So that wasn't great. And I had to really understand what I want to do with my life and if I was going to drive it or if I was going to let people's opinion of me drive it. And that's what switched it. I said in the book, I let it really bother me until I didn't. And it really was once it all came together, I'm like, I'm done with this. I am not going to spend time worrying about what other people think. I know what I'm made of and I know what I can do and I'll figure it out. But it was sort of like beat myself up. I got tired of beating myself up, to be honest, and reading negative things about what happened that weren't true and not being able to defend myself. I mean, even people were writing books about it and I'm like, oh my God, it's not even true.
There's a lot that you can read online, right? There's comments, there's articles, there's books, but it's a whole nother level when people are coming up to you in person and saying things to your face. So how did you deal with that?
I'm pretty sure I just walked away and I wanted to say something, but she was a really good friend of a really good friend. And what I ended up doing is it was my friend's party. I just went home. I even had reporters showing up at my door, my home door. And I was divorced and I still was living in the same house. So I had a male friend of mine move in just to answer the door. You know, because the other thing is, and I ended up changing the door. I had one of those doors that had some glass panels in it. So I ended up getting a door with like no windows except like a little bit at the top because I'm like, I don't need these randos showing up at my house.
It's scary also being alone in your house and having people show up. I mean,
it is scary. It got scary. Right. I want to go back to the book, but it happened with like one of the counterfeiters sent thugs to my door. Because I wouldn't return, TheRealReal wouldn't return the goods. He literally, to deliver me a lawsuit, but I mean, we have lawyers for any lawsuit. Every single counterfeiter TheRealReal dealt with had some lawyer, brother in Florida that actually would sue the company, and then those lawsuits disintegrate because guess what? They're counterfeiters. Yeah. But
okay, Julie, what do you do when you have thugs showing up to your door?
I called the police.
Yeah. I'd be having a panic attack.
Well, I mean, plus at that time I had 3 dogs. The dogs are going nuts. And they're like beating on the door. It's like 10:30 at night.
It's like straight out of a movie.
It was so scary. It was scary. Mm-hmm. And that was the intent, right? Like to send these big guys. And I could see them, which meant probably they could see me.
You're like, here I am running this multi-million-dollar business. It's so successful. We resell luxury goods. And I have thugs showing up at my door.
So I called the police. By the time the police got there, all that was left was the lawsuit shoved under my door. They go, we think they want to deliver this. I go, that's what my lawyers are from. There was something else going on there. So that was unnerving. But I mean, I got death threats too. So, you know, it's a weird thing. But when people physically come toward you, it is different. And then you have a choice. First of all, I was still beating myself up. Secondly, I couldn't believe someone who knows that we have mutual friends would be that vicious. Oh yeah, they're the worst. And then I was I didn't want to upset my friend, but I do think about a year later, I said, you know, her name was Susie. Susie is, do you know Susie? She goes, oh, she would never say that. I'm like, yeah, she did. So, you know.
So you kind of kept it to yourself.
I did because it just felt like, why make it worse? But, you know, for me, it made me pull in more, which to be honest, I don't mind being an introvert, but it was a sad, I had to go in to come out again, I guess, anyway.
Did the haters put a chip on your shoulder and make you want to be successful even more?
No, but a couple of things. One is I think being a woman in tech, you had to be a fighter anyway. So I remember someone saying, you have a chip on your shoulder. I'm like, no, I'm not going to be second when I could be first. I just wasn't going to do it. So I had that fight and spirit in me anyway. But I'll tell you what did, which is when I got the first year with the RealReal, we got it to $10 million. And I was out to raise venture capital. And I met with a well-known venture capitalist in San Francisco. I found that women understood the product, men didn't, female investor. And she was really interested in the business, asked for the financials. We were, like I said, we had 10 million in sales, went through all the data, spent a lot of time with her. And then probably when I sent her the latest deck, 2 days later, she announced an investment in a company called Threadflip that was pretty much doing what the RealReal was doing, but not offering complete consignor support and would only authenticate goods upon request. So they were sort of a hybrid. So she really was planning, she was just using my business to get data for another company that she clearly was going to invest in, which isn't illegal. It's smarmy. It's pretty bad behavior, but it's not illegal. So then you fast forward and I'm presenting at a fashion tech event in New York. And I figured I'm going to be out raising and by the way, and I got my round, didn't close with Canaan with Maha Ibrahim and Dana Settle of Greycroft. And we had one European, Matthias Schilling, who was great. So we got a nice round. It was great. And Matthias Schilling of Headline. So, all right, we got the round, but I figured I've got to start promoting the brand. So I'm in this fashion tech event in New York City, and it's arena style of seating. And they have judges. And, oh God, who's the Damon with the earring? Is that the guy with the earring? The guy that was on Shark Tank.
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Anyway, so he was the MC. Mm-hmm. So had a little razzle dazzle going. So I walk out, and I haven't talked to anyone in a large public arena since Pets. So I was already I didn't realize how much PTSD I still had in my body. I was getting ready. I was starting to have a panic attack. Actually, I stopped myself from going out because I started hyperventilating.
This is where we need a beta blocker because your body goes into fight or flight
But
mode.
I'd never experienced that before. And I didn't really know what was happening. So I sat down, I started breathing, I thought I'm going to faint. And then I'm like, no, I got to go out there because they're like waiting for me. And I see that person who, in my opinion, did a slimy thing as one of the judges. I didn't know who the judges were. And I was so mad. It cleared my head and cleared my panic. And I killed it.
Wow.
So
Good for
that's
you.
where that whole anger really did work. And I thought, you don't forget people that betray you.
Nope, you don't. And you use it as fuel. And that's
use it as fuel.
If you're a pro, you can use it as fuel.
Right.
Or you can let it get to you and it can affect your business and it can...
I don't believe in I might believe in retribution at some point, but I wouldn't for that because it's not worth the energy. It's like, you know what? And by the way, that company shut down. I'm like, no, that's the wrong model. You picked the wrong horse. Right. And you'll find out. Right. Yeah. Anyway, so that's what I did. But I would say anyone who creates a business automatically has to have a little chip on their shoulder because you have so many people telling you what can't be done and everyone telling you why it won't work as opposed to figuring out how to make it work. So if you don't have that energy, you aren't a good entrepreneur.
Especially as a woman.
Oh, it's harder as a woman because there's a couple of things that people don't like. Women don't like it and men don't like it when women get mad. They're like, oh, they're mad. It's like, yeah. So we have a weird dynamic always. And it's going to be there. I mean, I was hoping it would die before I died, but it won't. It's just there. It's unfortunate. But you can't let other people stop you and their opinions. So they may think that, but then what do you think of people like that? Well, I think they actually aren't very evolved. So let them do what they're going to do, and I'm going to do what I'm going to do. But it's still hard every time, especially when you think you know someone and then they drop a bomb on you. You're like, oh, well, sometimes you see what you want to see.
But like, what do you think is the learning there? It's kind of like you need to have a close inner circle, especially when you get to the point that.
Well, you do, but then you don't want to cut yourself off. So I think the learning is you're stronger than a person's negative thoughts and feelings, and that people reveal themselves over time. And then on the more generous thing is we're all human, trying to figure it out. And something obviously went wrong in their childhood or went wrong and they're trying to figure it out, and you're not on the same wavelength. And so you just give them compassion. So that's like once you move past the ego thing and you can move into compassion, because I mean, there are some pretty scary people out there that have medical conditions. I think narcissism is one of them that's really scary. But most people aren't narcissists, and most people aren't trying to hurt someone else. They're just hurt. Mm-hmm. And they haven't got the skills yet.
Yeah, and a lot of people are out for themselves, especially when they're young and in their career. And
well, I understand that, because look, you have energy, you have optimism. Hopefully you come out thinking, I can do this, or I'm going to figure it out. And also you just have, when you're young, you have like racing hormones too. So you've got a lot to think about.
That's true.
That's all good fuel, and I think people that really want to build a business and want to figure it out when they're young, it's the best time. It's also great when you're older, but it's great because the cost, even when I left Clorox, the guy says, you'll never work with anyone as smart as you, Howard. The people at Clorox, which turned out not to be true, although the people at Clorox were smart. And, this company may fail. It's like, and I said to him, I'm young. And, I even told him I took half my salary. And I'm like, I'm too young to be like worried about those things. And I think youth, that's the beauty of youth. You've got latitude and time to figure out everything. At some point, you don't. So,
but you seem to be a
point you don't.
But what I like really respect about you is I think like as people get older, right? They always say like they take less risk. But you weren't somebody that was afraid to take risk and get scrappy, right? And at 52, you start the RealReal.
Let's be real here.
What? Tell me.
I lost half my money, and my ex-husband was a social worker. So I think it's fair to say that I made the money. All right. So I lost half the money in the divorce. No one in tech likes a failure, even though they say, oh, we embrace failure. They don't embrace failure. And when being a woman is really hard in tech anyway. And so I had to figure something out because I was running out of money. So yes, of course I got scrappy. What is that? What am I going to do? Sit there and cry for another 10 years and then collect Social Security?
Right.
I mean,
so you hit rock bottom and you had to lift yourself out of it.
I don't know if it was rock bottom for me. I mean, when you hear other people's stories that they really hit rock bottom, an unimaginable rock bottom. I mean, I didn't drown myself in alcohol and drugs, but I did drown myself in letting other people's opinion affect me. And I'm so glad the RealReal, I'm so thankful it worked out. I knew it was going to work out. And you had to get scrappy. No one else was going to clean the toilets, take out the trash, skew the product, negotiate with UPS, find a photographer that didn't mind stepping into a bathroom, to take a photo when we first got started. Most of them didn't want to do that, by the way.
Right.
That was hard position.
And when you guys first got started, consignment wasn't as big of a thing, right? I mean, I know that there were vintage stores on the Upper East Side that for years women were going to, right? And I remember like Jeremy's mom, my husband's mom always talks about the consignment stores that she would go into uptown, and she'd be able to find good pieces, right? So there was that element of like vintage shopping.
But no one had brought the internet and harnessed the power of the internet. Right. And no one had provided the service on a national level that we did, and no one had authenticated the goods.
So when did the idea spark for you?
Oh, when I was shopping with my girlfriend, and that's where she spent her money. And we used to shop together all the time because women, we used to buy suits all the time, and they weren't sold as separates. Like you'd have to buy the suit. And I was like a 4 on the top and a 2 on the bottom. She was a 2 on the top and a 4 on the bottom. So we'd go shopping and switch outfits. We'd like, here, we're buying this suit.
I love those friends.
So you have like a complete suit that fit you as opposed to getting altered. But I mean, she's this is Anne. So she's a lot of fun. And we love shopping together. I had never seen her walk into a consignment store. So it was an aberrant behavior. But I had already said moving into luxury is something Amazon will never do. And I knew I wasn't going to start a luxury brand, but I had that nugget racing, just resting somewhere in my head. And then I saw luxury opportunity in a place that had never been done. I didn't even realize how large the luxury market was. Researched what I could understand in terms of, how much built up over time, how much closet, how much comes out, what's the average time for the product to stay in someone's closet? How do people get rid of the
average time?
Well, now I think it's about 2 years, 2 to 3 years. But
people hold on to a bag.
Bags a little longer, and it depends on the bags. But I would say 2 to 3 years on the clothes. Bags can be 5 to 7, but some people, flip fast if it's trendy.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a lot of people too that like to justify buying something new, they have like a theory where they get rid of, certain things, right? And I try to do that sometimes with my clothes.
Well, that's what the RealReal enables.
Right.
Now I do that all the time. I'm like, okay, I'm going to sell this and then I'm going to buy this.
Right. Especially in New York when we have limited closet space, right? Like we
yes.
have to be savvy with our clothes and how we keep ourselves organized and almost slightly minimalist, but not really, right?
Right. No, I mean, honestly, I'm always rotating things and the RealReal allows me to do it. But I would say I just had a pickup this week and half of it was things I'd consigned, which is also an amazing value then.
Okay, so I want to ask you about the fact, because you came from the tech world, right?
Right.
But were you always fashionable?
Sadly, yes, I always liked fashion.
Okay.
All right.
So you always liked brands.
I did, and I've always spent too much money on clothes, which doesn't mean I understand merchandising. And it certainly meant, I certainly wasn't cool. So I wasn't cool, but I understood. Look, this comes back, I'm sure, from my mother wanting to be a fashion illustrator. And she loved good design. She loved good fabrics. Like I said, if she saw something in somebody's house, like the rug, she would say, when you're ready to sell it, because she thought it was beautiful and beautifully made. So I think all of those things built into it. My mother was pretty fashionable in the 60s. She had the whole thing going. So I do love it. I've always loved it. I've always honored it. I always thought they were artists. And I always spent way too much money on clothes. So this helped offset my need, but it was also a good business. I wouldn't have done that. Like I said, I never bought resale till I started the RealReal, and now I shop resale regularly.
And it took time, I'm sure, to get the consumer to adapt to consignment and trust it, right?
I just think we did such a good job. There's always people that are like, that didn't trust us or was weirded out by it or something. But we made such an effort to make it look hip and modern. Our challenge, and the company's challenge is still probably this, was getting product in, not selling it. And most people were so comfortable with letting us try using the internet to help sell their goods because it was just sitting there. And then once people got their first check, they're like, oh, I'm going to do this again. So the repeat rate from the very beginning was very, very high. And any issues, let's just put it this way, and this is sort of the way the world works when things happen that are new. The coasts tend to adapt faster. And specifically, New York is a fast adopter, fast trier. San Francisco, if it's technology, obviously is. LA, a little later, but not much later. But anyone up and down the coast, Florida, medium, but New York, LA, San Francisco, early adopters. Well, just with those cities alone, you've got almost 20 million people, not quite, but if you do the broader Bay Area, you've got 20 million people to run some good tests on. And then when you start moving in, it was a key city plan. Chicago's a little later, but not much later, like 2 years later. And Texas was like 4 years. We had someone in Texas right away, but it was so slow. Texas people like what they like, and you have to convince them to move off what they like. And it's hard. It's hard to do it. It's worth it, but it's hard to do it. So I would say that we won in the Bay Area and New York faster than I thought. And the other markets came as they came. But if we didn't win in New York and we didn't win in the Bay Area, it wouldn't have worked.
It definitely makes sense. Also, New York is like the mecca of like fashion,
It
right?
is.
The people here, it's It's crazy. Like I was rewatching Sex and the City this year. It's so good. And
The original, right?
the original.
Yeah, I love.
Oh my gosh. And just to see the bags and everything that they were wearing, it's just, it's really cool. How did you get people to adapt? Like when you guys did your first couple of drops, right? Like who were you sourcing from? Who was giving
you know what
guys
we
stuff?
did? And from the beginning, we said, we're going to come pick it up. And we were giving people 70% off. So if they dropped off in a brick and mortar store, they'd get 55 maybe percent, had no visibility in the sales. It's like, no, we'll give you, at the beginning, everything was 70% to the consignor because we had to have a way in. And then over time, we changed that and did it, you know, some products you can still get 85 points on. But we had to change it based on the product and sellability of the product. The other thing was we always had to price it to move. So we weren't looking for the best price. My fear was I'd be warehousing product and nothing would sell. So what I was looking for was the optimal price within a 90-day window, which meant that this was all made up, but it was based on good knowledge of just mechanics of not wanting to get a bigger warehouse and understanding how people think. I wanted 90% of all product to sell in 90 days, which meant that if it didn't sell in the first couple, weeks, that the price had to come down. We were wrong on the price. Now, quite a bit of that's been automated to some degree, but it really is finding that sweet spot on price point. Because if you give us your goods and you don't know where they are, you don't see them anymore, which did freak out some early consignors. They're just disappeared. And then you see it on the website, but they're not selling. Then you're like, okay, well, do I want my goods back? What's happening? They're not selling. So you needed to hit the right price that made the consumer happy. But at the end of the day, it's a marketplace. So if people weren't biting at that price point, then your price was too high. It had to come down. And then you try to go 5%, 10% down. And the thing is, the RealReal never made a flat fee. So we made more money if the consignor made money. So it always made sense because we took a percent of the sale to get the highest price, but not have product building up in the warehouse that wasn't going to sell. Hence, focusing on only key products. The RealReal never took all products. We took a select group of products that we knew had high consumer traction and sell-through ability.
Right. Like what were the brands that you guys prioritized in the early days?
Oh, the top ones, which are still there, like Chanel, Louis Vuitton, Prada, Gucci, Hermes, Rolex. Those are really some Cartier. All right, some of the best brands. And then ones that we didn't, believe it or not, we did not take in Diane von Furstenberg dresses at the beginning because we said it's not luxury. We added them later and they sell so fast.
They do. Yeah.
So as we built the brand, we started expanding into mid-tier luxury.
Like IRO.
Yes.
And IRO was one of the first jackets I bought for myself on the RealReal.
Which was probably great because we got some amazing, they're leather jackets. Did you buy a leather jacket?
I bought what are they called? It's not leather, it's shearling.
Oh, that's fabulous.
And it was like, I remember I bought it and it was like the most expensive jacket I had ever bought for myself. And I just loved it. And then my mom left it in one of our closets that had too much light in the summer, like at their house. And it just got, I don't like sunburnt, honestly. I don't even know how to explain it. But when you just don't store them right.
Out.
Yeah, it literally bleached it. But I got so much good wear out of that jacket.
No, I love that. Yes. Yeah. So we did expand brands, expanded categories, and then went down to mid-tier luxury, which I think is where the innovation is. It's so much fun, mid-tier, especially now. I think it's fun.
When you first started out, obviously it's like you kind of know the mainstream brands, right? The Gucci, the Hermes, the brands that you just listed. But there still is like a lot to learn about that luxury category. So like what were some of the things that you, even though you were somebody that loved brands and loved fashion and grew up around it with a mom that loved it, like what were some of the things that you had to learn quickly that you maybe didn't know going into the fashion space?
Well, let me tell you what our process was, because every problem has a solution. So I don't think we didn't know it. It's just we had to figure out things. So here's what we did. We crawled all of Neiman Marcus's, Saks. At that time, there was a Barney's, Nordstrom site. Filtered it for the highest priced items, all right? So we knew exactly what their buys were. All right. And we would watch the prices over time. So our first pickup was a superset of all the brands combined that those stores carried. All right. So that's number one. So that was important because we knew, because I always say they know where the bodies are. They buried, they know where the goods are because they were the prime sellers at the time. The boutiques weren't as successful as they are now and weren't as widespread. So they know where the bodies are. So that was really important to understand, that we wanted to cover the brands that they cover because they also have the highest value and the highest credibility. And then we had to figure out where we're going to put people. And it was like, again, we didn't just look at population size. We also looked at where did these retailers have a bigger store and what was their squares, because they're not going to put a bigger store in a low value area. So we sort of mapped our plan on where we're going to put people outside of New York based on the square footage of what these. So we look for precedents that showed us that we're strategic precedents because the data wasn't available. And then after that, everything we did I would say we've always been data driven, but by year 5, we had phenomenal tools in our own business, and it just kept getting better. We had a phenomenal dashboard every group did to understand where the business was at all times, and it's gotten better since I've left. They can now tell you what the value that's come into the warehouse when it ships, which is not something that you could do before.
I know that you write about this in your book, because on our walk, you kind of reference some of the mistakes that you guys made along the way during the business and some of the hiccups. What were some of those big hiccups that became like pivotal turning points for The RealReal?
We didn't have turning points, but I'll tell you what, we learned a lot. So the very first sale, we had cart hoarders, and we're like, no one's buying everything. People just like one person put everything in their cart. And then we're like, we need a cart timer.
Yeah.
Otherwise, this business is going to die. So that hence the cart timer. When we opened our first pop-up, first store was a pop-up in Soho. When I say this, you're going to be like, you didn't think of this. So it's so obvious, but we didn't think of it. We had no idea people were going to come in with consignment and want to consign the spot. We're like, oh, I guess, yeah, we're a consignment store. That's what people do in a consignment store. We had no idea. We had no space for them to work. We had to, in our little pop-up 8 weeks, we generated so much consignment.
Like they would come and bring their stuff.
Bring their things. But that's what people do, right? Mm-hmm. Before the RealReal.
Right.
Never occurred to us, because we weren't brick and mortar people, that's what people would do.
Yeah. So how did you adapt quickly to that?
When we launched the store, we made consignment offices.
Right.
And made that whole area downstairs. And we're like, well, we gotta this has to be comfortable. You can't just do it on the floor and go through things. So we had to switch our thinking. Just to give you an idea, that Soho store, which is still there on Worcester, was our first store ever in the U.S. And we all the learning from the pop-up we applied. But this is before COVID hit, that store was doing $80 million a year, of which half of it was consignment coming in. So we looked at total GMV value of that store. So $40 million in sales and $40 million of incremental consignment coming in. I mean, it was always hard to prove incremental versus pickup, but some of it was clearly incremental. But that's one of those things, like when you sit back and you're like, of course people wanted to do that. So it's things, I would say it's more about taking a trial and thinking, oh, we're really smart. And then you feel like you're not that smart. You missed the basic thing that people wanted to do.
Yeah, you just learn things along the way. And I think something about like dropping off consignment at a consignment store, like you're right, that is a thing that at thrift stores, even in New York and vintage shops, like in any city, that's the big thing is you go and you drop off your bags of clothes and they take it and they give you a price for it, whatever. So it's kind of fun that it turned into that being a part of your business.
Well,
right?
it had to be. But it was, the other thing which I thought was really funny, we weren't prepared in the pop-up to take cash. Mm-hmm. I'm like, cash? Because you're an online business. You're like, people buy things on cash? Mm-hmm. I know that's
funny that even then, like you guys didn't think about,
No, we didn't think about cash. Then all of a sudden we had to like get a secure cash register, bring cash in. We're like, and of course we're going to say yes. But I remember this person wanted to pay cash for an expensive handbag and he needed like $100 back or something. And I remember going and asking employees, like, do you have any money so we can give this? Because we weren't set up for that. We weren't going to miss the sale. So we just like cleaned out our own wallets to make sure this guy got his return on his, like, isn't Isn't that funny?
Yeah,
It's so stupid. It's like we weren't retailers. We were online retailers, but we weren't brick and mortar retailers at that time. And those two things I'll never forget, because the cash thing, it's like, of course people pay in cash. I pay in cash. So
Right.
Well, not so much anymore, but I did then.
What was the first product that you bought from the RealReal? Do you remember?
Yes, I do. I even know the consignor's name. It was a Margiela sweater, and it was so cool. And it had like this cute, it really was, no, this is crazy. It was a gray cashmere sweater, and it had arms, no sweater, but it also had arms that came around like you've tied another sweater around it, and you just tie it around. And it was just so chic and so, silly on some level, so playful. And I loved it. So that was first. My favorite things have always been the jewelry. The fine jewelry is really nice. I don't have any on today because I thought we were doing a workout, but Cartier is really fabulous. I bought different watches and sold different watches there. Rolex is still one of my favorite watch brands because the introductory price point's high, but it's still you can get one for like $5,000, and the resale value is always strong with the brand because they're so well made. So I would say the jewelry is something I've kept, but I do remember the first purchase, and that was that consignor that I said when I opened a box, you do everything. Yeah. And I'm like, this person's my style. And then you're like, oh, this person's my size, which was remarkable. And then one of us lost or gained weight. I don't know. We fell out of rhythm, but then I was like, oh, I can't wear things anymore. So that was disappointing, but we had a good run together. She didn't even know. Because like I said, we had a delay before we employees could shop at the site. Mm-hmm. And every time I'm like, I'm going to get that because I knew it would fit.
There was a funny story that you told on a recent interview, and I'm curious if it's in the book too, the story. But the woman, was the woman in California that was having her?
Oh my gosh, it was
Chanel. Yeah.
Yes. So she had a seamstress, and she was making fake Chanel outfits, and she was quite the socialite, and she was always photographed in these products, and they were good replicas, but they were replicas. The resale value would have been way over $100,000. She wasn't doing handbags, just clothing, and right off the runway clothing. And we did not put her in jail, which we should have, but we did blacklist her and keep the items and said, we know these are fakes. And but we said, if you do this again, we will actually take legal action against you. And sure enough, she came back with, her husband's like, oh, she doesn't do that anymore. We're like, no, we're done with you. I'm sorry. But in most cases, we would, especially with companies that she was trying to make a business out of it. But there are low-level counterfeiters everywhere in the U.S.
And isn't that crazy? Somebody that's like a socialite that has money. That's the funniest part about it.
The whole thing.
The luxury
And then
world
they were going to
is
fool
wild.
us. And they were going to fool us.
Right.
That was the other thing. They're like, oh, they don't know what they're doing. We're like, these aren't real.
So for context, this woman had a seamstress that was really good at making Chanel counterfeit products. And she would buy the Chanel, bring it to her.
Return the Chanel.
And return it.
Right.
Her Chanel sales rep was probably like, what is going on?
Well, at some point, I'm sure they cut her off.
Right.
But yeah, so though it was, people are wild. Mm-hmm. I mean, people are wild.
It's a crazy industry.
Well, resale is because, yes, there's always something. There's always some drama around it. So can I tell one more story? I know we've talked a long time, but you hire people and they have skill sets, and then there's some skill sets that don't map to someone when you're in a startup, you're a generalist. So you have to do a little bit of this. You have to do everything. Otherwise you can't make the company work. And we hired a banker. I'm not going to give you her name. And she was doing strategic partnerships, looking out, because like I said before, you always needed more watches. Were there partners? Are there any partners we can work with? So she was always on the lookout for that. One day she answered the customer service line, and this person, and our employee, I'm just going to call her Samantha, but that wasn't her name. Samantha was very logical, all right? And she was all about doing deals. She answers the customer service line, and the person is really upset that her shoes sold at a certain price, that she had paid, I don't know, probably $1,200 for a pair of shoes, and we had sold them for $400. and then she got 70% of that. So I couldn't believe it that was all she got for the shoes, and was like almost hysterical. And Samantha's like saying, you do know you're talking about used shoes, right? That you're all this, and I'm like, oh no. I mean, she was trying to logic her out of it. And this woman had an emotional response. And so I ended up taking a piece of white paper with marker and wrote cue cards. No, apologize now. Then say, I'm really sorry. And then I'd write, I understand. And so I was like writing real-time cue cards for her to walk this person off the cliff.
Wait, how do you walk somebody off the cliff in that situation? Because I would respond like Samantha, and I would be logical because you would think that's the thing to do, right? But I understand that was one of the big things that you guys had to deal with at The RealReal.
All the time.
Constantly.
Constant. And also, yes. I think you're empathetic. You try to do something, you try to explain, you try to make your policies really transparent. So, but people are busy, so they miss things. You give them the benefit of the doubt. You may take care of them once. But then if they do it again, then you got a problem. And then you have a problem. All right. But I think the key is more transparency with the consignor before they consign. So they know what they're doing. They know the percentage. So there shouldn't be any surprises. But then we're assuming they read what we give them. Or we're assuming that the luxury manager that comes to your house tells them what we expect them to tell them. So then you put surveys in place and monitor and iterate. So especially when you get to big scale, it has to be information and monitoring through surveys, and then also checking customer service stats and what's going on, their CSAT. So there's lots of tools to know on a macro level, but when you have a really upset customer on the phone, you don't logic with them. I mean, because they're upset, and maybe something terrible happened in their house, maybe that you don't even know about. They could be like, the shoes are a metaphor for something.
Yeah, so true.
And so there's some drama going on there. Maybe they really need really needed the money. So you just have to like give them the benefit of the doubt, and then look for repeat offenders, which is what the algorithm can do.
Right.
Yeah.
And you can find them. Yeah. When The RealReal IPO'd in 2019, right?
Yes.
What was that feeling like for you?
It was exhilarating. So I was only the 23rd woman to take a company public, which is shocking because I think over 9,000 companies have gone public. So that was a milestone. It was a sad one. But when you take money in, you have to figure out a way to get money out. I knew The RealReal was a public company. It wasn't going to be sold. It's too weird of a company to be sold. And at least at the time it was. And to know that any employee and their family that had been there 5 years or more was invited, put up in a hotel room, invited to the party, invited to the event. And you look around the room and you're like, there are multiple millionaires in this room at today's stock price. Now that changed, and most of them were women, by the way. Not that that's important, but it sort of is important. And it felt great. It was really a high. It was wonderful. And then all kinds of craziness erupted. So after that, before our first quarterly meeting, quarterly results were reported. But that one day, at that moment, people were saying, this is the best day of my life besides having kids. And I'm like, what about when you got married? They're like, it's tied maybe, So, I mean, people were coming up just exhilarating. It was a great party. It was Gay Pride Week. So we had the village people who didn't do a great job, to be honest. They sort of dialed it in. But we did have Sister Sledge who really brought it. And so we had it was sort of a throwback because I'm old. But it was fun. It was fun. It was camp. The party was great. The stock shot way up. At one time, the market cap was over $2 billion. And I'm like, yeah, this is what we worked hard for.
It's just like after all that work and kind of the redemption arc, it's just to have that moment. It's just surreal. What has it been like? When did you step away from the company?
Oh, I didn't step away.
You did.
I got fired.
You did?
Yes. No, this is why I want you to read the book. You have to read the book. I don't want to talk too much about it. No, I had a major falling. All right. So let me give you the premise because I don't really know what happened. But here's what I think happened. I'm pretty sure. There was one guy, the last money in, a PE guy, who anyway, when the stock really fell during COVID, he never sold. Every other board member that the original investors tend to be board members, and they got off the board to sell stock so you weren't restricted by SEC rules because they're smart. This guy never sold his stock. He probably had tremendous pressure. I had new board members who I would question a lot of things about them in retrospect. Like I said, values and integrity matter and honesty matters. And he was working against me while I was trying to pull the company out of COVID. And he was, who knows what stories he told him, but that I didn't help myself. I told him to fuck off in a board meeting. And then the women jumped down my throat. You can't talk to a man like that. And you can't talk to a board member. I'm like, he's lying. So he was out to get me. I didn't help myself. It got worse after that. And then they brought in a man to replace me who was unemployed at the time, had never been a CEO before, had never obviously run a public company as a CEO because he hadn't been one, knew one of the board members, and he was fired about 15 months later. And then for interesting reasons. And then Rati Levesque, who's running the company now, was the first employee, and she got promoted to CEO. But the board's still the same. I think there's one new board member. So she still has the same challenges I have. The difference is I'm not good around people lie to my face, and I'm not good when people go behind my back. And there's very few things that make me angry. I'm really mad that I gave away my power to that person. I was also really tired after COVID and everything we went through. But like I said, somebody was out to get me, and I walked in and I gave them reason and walked into the trap.
Mm-hmm. What was it like leaving your baby?
It was horrible. So we don't want to end on this, but it was horrible. It was really horrible.
But are you happy that that chapter is kind of closed?
I don't know. It's such a good chapter. I've got other things I'm doing now. It's true. Way back when, the tabloids used to have pictures when I was a kid of people that spontaneously combusted. They were just walking and then they just blew up, and all you saw were their smoldering shoes and their ankles that were charred, but they were gone. So I used to think of all the board members just spontaneously combusting, and it gave me great joy. I would be like, God, there they are, their little charred feet are still there, but nothing else is left of them.
Well, you know what, glass half full, it's amazing to have built something with your idea that became bigger than yourself.
Oh my God, it's great. Honestly, it's great. And it changed fashion, and we didn't even talk about the importance of recirculating goods and how it actually was the RealReal was the first company to talk about sustainability and the importance of recirculating goods versus buying new. All of these things are fabulous. People are greedy. People lie when it comes to money. People will do whatever. And I'm not one to play politics. So let's just say it happened. I wish it didn't happen. I consult with a lot of entrepreneurs now. I'm speaking. I started a nutrition company called Ahara, which is either going to be shut down or sold this month. So I don't know. I feel good. I feel good.
The entrepreneur in you lives on.
It does. But I have to tell you, so when I look at my mother's life, and by the time when she was 28, she had her first episode of multiple sclerosis. She had 4 kids by then.
She had MS.
She had MS. But it was misdiagnosed. By the time she was 36, it was properly diagnosed, and she started on a rapid decline. And by the time then she sort of knew her life was over. Drugs are different. This is a long time ago.
We have a family friend that has it, yeah.
It's still a hard disease, but the drugs are better now, but there were no drugs then. There were experiments like be in an oxygen container, have your fillings removed because mercury's poisoning your body. Anyway, a lot of crazy stuff was tried. But she knew her life was sort of over. And by her 40s, she was mentally incapacitated and couldn't feed herself. So, in a wheelchair. So, and then I look at my life and I'm like, come on. It's not what I thought it would be. In many ways, it's better. And it's had some interesting turns.
Life is a roller coaster.
Yeah.
We're just riding those highs and lows.
And it's always interesting. It's always interesting.
Yeah, Julie, that's the thing that I really appreciate you after getting to know you today is you have lived such an interesting life. Like seriously, you're curious, you're smart, you're so creative, you're so capable. It's just so like inspiring to sit across from a woman like you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's been hard, but it's been worth it. I mean, it's when I look at it, it's like, it is hard. It's hard when you're not following a norm. But then what else are you going to do if you can't? It's...
Yeah, I saw this quote the other day that somebody said, and it's that the universe favors the bold.
Oh, don't you love that?
I do.
Don't you wish it were always true?
I
don't think it's always true. I always love those axioms. And you're like, just like someone's like, karma, it's all karma. I'm like, really? Is it? Because in my lifetime, sometimes it seems like karma and sometimes it seems like karma doesn't exist. But I don't think it hurts to think it exists. And I don't think it's hard to think that that's true. But I'll tell you what I do know. If you don't take a risk, you're never going to know anything about yourself or about life. And every single day is, whether you're in a relationship, that's a risk. Whether you take a job, that's a risk. When you step out of your comfort zone is where you grow. And to me, that's what life's all about. And it makes it really challenging and fun.
All right. Well, your new book, Time to Get Real, is currently sitting behind me, guys. So if you loved Julie's story today, you can read all about it in her new book. And I'm just so happy, again, I've said this a couple times, but I'm so happy that you put your story down on paper. It's a hard thing to do. I know it took you a lot of time to do it, but it's nice to know that it's finally all in there. A lot of it is, at least.
A lot of it. There's some good stories.
Yeah. We're in a new chapter now, but maybe you'll write another book about it someday. Who knows?
I don't know what I'm going to do, but that's fun. This is the first time in my life I don't know what I'm going to do. Mm-hmm. But whatever it is, it's going to be fun.
If you could go back and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
I think you just need to learn to love yourself more, faster, sooner. That's where everything starts. And once you master that, everything else gets easier because then you're more accepting of other people's issues. But if you don't love yourself, everything falls apart. And that means accepting when you're good and bad and fail and succeed. That's it.
Well, thank you so much, Julie.
Wait.
What?
And as a woman, if you're pretty, just love yourself. That's it. That's all you got, babe.
Yeah.
No matter how you look, what you do, you have to accept yourself.
It's so true. Literally, you have to accept yourself through the darkest of moments and just everything in between. It's
Absolutely.
It's so true. Well, this has been so fun. Thank you so much.